From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo, and this is From the South. Another criminal investigation against the former president of Peru, Alberto Fujimori, is underway, this time related to mass forced sterilizations of indigenous women that were carried out during his time in office. Prosecutor Marcelita Gutierrez has accused Fujimori and 3 of his former ministers of this crime. According to the Ombudsman Office, nearly 300,000 forced sterilizations were performed between 1996 and 2001. The women were reportedly threatened and sometimes forced into undergoing this procedure. Our correspondent in Peru, Jaime Herrera, has more.
La fiscal superior Marcelita Gutierrez.
Senior prosecutor Marcelita Gutierrez has filed a lawsuit against former President Alberto Fujimori and 4 of his former ministers and other officials. They are being accused of crimes against humanity in regards to the forced sterilization of hundreds of thousands of indigenous women. There are even talks of 5 women who died because of this practice. Around 2,100 testimonies have been gathered from women who were forcibly sterilized as part of a birth control program imposed during Fujimori's administration. Women organizations have said there is finally going to be justice for this crime, which has long been condemned. Some of the evidence in this case are orders from the Health Ministry about sterilization quotas in health centers, especially in Quechua-speaking regions. What is known now is that in the coming days, former ministers Costa Bauer and Alejandro Aguinaga, the current doctor for Fujimori, could be called to testify.
We thank Jaime Herrera for that report. More news now. Military police in the northeast of Brazil have used force to try to break up a land occupation. About 100 police moved into the Novo Pindarim camp in the state of Piauí to evict 250 landless families who have been occupying the area for 2 years. At least 1 person was reportedly injured. In the last week, eviction orders have been issued against 2 other land occupations in Brazil. Social movements have taken to the streets in Brazil to protest against a controversial law that, if approved, would greatly censure topics discussed in schools. If the law is approved, teachers won't be able to use words such as oppression or gender, or even talk about political issues in classrooms. The law is currently being discussed in Congress. Earlier on Tuesday, a group of teachers and students were prevented from entering Congress to participate in the discussions.
Democracy is being attacked. We couldn't get past here and enter the room where the debate is happening. Democracy is at risk. We came with representatives from teachers and student organizations, and we were prevented from entering. They don't want to give us the right to protest against something that for us represents a major attack.
Audio recordings have been released in Colombia accusing Attorney General Néstor Humberto Martínez of knowing about the Odebrecht bribery scheme since 2015. The information was revealed during an interview with a key witness in the corruption case, Jorge Enrique Pizano, who died a week ago. Pizano said that he met the Attorney General in 2015 and warned him about the bribery. At the time, Martínez was being considered for the position of Attorney General. The Attorney General has rejected these accusations in a public statement. Martínez said he did not inform the authorities about the bribes because Pizano was not sure the bribery scheme was real. U.S. troops in Texas have begun to lay barbed wire at the border for the various migrant caravans approaching the U.S.-Mexico border. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency has announced they will also close down lanes at the border crossing and set up barricades. This is all part of President Donald Trump's zero tolerance on immigration, which includes sending nearly 15,000 troops to the border and suspending asylum requests for anyone who enters illegally. U.S. Secretary of Defense James Mattis is expected to visit the border area on Wednesday. Our correspondent in Mexico, Pablo Perez, is in Jalisco and has more details about the migrants' ongoing journey.
Well, we are right now at El Arenal, Jalisco. This place is around 40 kilometers out of Guadalajara, the place where the migrant caravan stayed for the last night. And this is the place where they were taken by buses, and so far they still have to walk or travel by their own means the next 90 kilometers until the town of Ixtlán del Río, Nayarit. Nayarit, the next state in their route, has been severely damaged by Hurricane Willa. So the authorities in the state of Nayarit, they say that they cannot take care of the migrant caravan because they have their shelters occupied already with over 130 people that have been damaged in their properties by the hurricane. So what Nayarit state is offering is a bus ride from the southern border of the state to the northern border, where they are limited with Sinaloa. So right now the migrant caravan has to travel 90 kilometers until the next state, so they can ride by bus another 200 kilometers. This is gonna be one of the longest journeys in one day they have made so far, and we will keep you informed.
Migrants heading north are trying to find transportation that can help them travel longer distances. The US border is still far away, although there are people who don't want to cross it. They would rather stay in Mexico.
There are jobs here and everything we need. They have even offered us residency. Many have accepted, but they still want to remain near the border.
The organization People Without Borders is helping the caravan to remain safe during their 2,000-kilometer journey.
Compañeros, agárrense por favor, tengan mucho cuidado, acuérdense que la vida ante todo. Por favor, agárrense y cuídense, compañeros. Cuídense en el camino, por favor. Agárrense.
Truck drivers often stop to pick up some of them from one town to the next one.
I help them because I want them to fulfill their dream, to come out from poverty, even if it's a big risk to give them a ride in the back of a truck.
Families also face a risk, especially with their children.
I'd rather risk my life here with my family than live in Honduras with the crime and the leaders that rule our country.
In this stretch of the road, they are walking a distance 6 times longer than they did in their first days. Thanks to a careful planning, the caravan has managed to reach Guadalajara, the country's second largest city.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. The former Vice President of Ecuador, Jorge Glass, has announced that he will continue his hunger strike, adding that he will no longer drink any liquids. He started the hunger strike 24 days ago to protest being transferred from a jail in Quito to the maximum security prison in La Tacunga. According to Glass, this was a political motivated move by the current administration of President Lenín Moreno, who had declared war against former President Rafael Correa and members of his administration. Our correspondent in Quito, Denise Herrera, has more.
Hello, yes, indeed, the Ecuadorian former Vice President Jorge Glass is on the 24th day of hunger strike. He also started refusing to eat, not only to eat food, but also to eat water. And in light of this, the Ombudsman's Office of Ecuador has published a report where they rejected this measure and also are calling to the authorities to take responsibility of the situation of Jorge Glass inside the jail in La Tacunga. Also, the judge of La Tacunga has rejected the action of habeas corpus presented by the legal team of former Vice President of Ecuador, Jorge Glass. Under this, his family and close friends of the citizen revolution movement highlighted the irregularities inside this process and legal process against Jorge Glass. Now his legal defense team also are calling to the authorities to take again Jorge Glass to jail 4, where he started his legal process. It's all for now. Back to you at the studio.
That was Denise Herrera from Quito. Workers from Aerolíneas Argentinas are condemning a campaign by the ruling Cambiemos Alliance that seeks to privatize the state-owned airline. A representative from the pilots' union said the government of Mauricio Macri is trying to pit airline workers against the people. This by spreading fake news about their working conditions and wages. The union says these attacks are meant to help justify the adjustment measures imposed on the people by request of the International Monetary Fund. Campesinos in Argentina continue to be evicted from their land. That's in spite of laws that are meant to protect them. Let's find out more in this report.
Judge Olga Zulema Zapac recently ruled in favor of evicting campesino families in the province of Jujuy in Argentina, even though the law prohibits it. The judge is linked to a real estate business in the rural area.
We had been living there for 20 years until we were evicted. My mum passed away recently and they evicted us not long after.
This is a shame. We had to leave everything behind, everything we built, our corrals, our farms. We need to rebuild everything to move our cattle. This hurts me deeply.
The Diaz family is one example. They've been living in their farm for over 50 years before being evicted.
This was very rough for us. They are not just throwing us out of our homes, they are killing our culture. Our home was the last mainstay of our people in the area.
A major issue for these campesinos families is finding land where their animals can graze in order to survive, which is something that proves more difficult every day due to the rise of agribusiness.
We don't have access to water. We have to carry water for 2 kilometers. We are 8 kilometers away from the nearest road. Nothing is close to us. If it rains, we can't use the roads. We are barely getting by.
Social organizations have slammed the state for denying campesinos their right, as they often have no legal recourse.
To this day in Argentina, campesinos have been trying to have their homes legally recognized as theirs through a law that provides full ownership after a person has lived there for 20 years. But in general, these people end up being evicted because the justice system fails to recognize any improvements that have been made in the lands by the families and gives the lands to agribusiness companies.
Campesinos are still determined to fight for what's theirs. Through solidarity and effective organization, they hope to win.
Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has said the major joint natural gas deal signed with Venezuela would usher in a new area in regional cooperation. Trinidad and Venezuela signed a major energy cooperation deal back in August. The United States, once a major importer of gas, is now a competing exporter, but the Caribbean can now become a major competitor.
Ministers, the Dragon deal is a prime example of the symbiotic relationship between Trinidad and Tobago and its nearest neighbor, Venezuela, and an indication of cooperation among neighbors, but more importantly, among 2 founding members of the GECF member countries. Additionally, the Caribbean region is becoming a hotbed for hydrocarbon exploration. Recent successes in exploration in Guyana has prompted interests in Suriname, Cuba, Barbados, Grenada, and Guyana. These countries can benefit from Trinidad's experience in the hydrocarbon arena, while providing opportunities for Trinidad and Tobago in many aspects of the hydrocarbon value chain.
Our correspondent in Trinidad and Tobago, Kijan Haynes, brings us the latest.
Now, the theme of this meeting could all be about change and adapting to change. With the United States moving from a major importer of natural gas to exporter and other shifts in the status quo, it means Trinidad now needs to figure out how to export gas to new countries. Now, some of those countries are in Asia or Africa, and that's of course much further away than the US, which means it's more expensive and more logistical to send it there. And the price of gas has not changed. And smaller countries like Trinidad and Tobago, though major exporters of natural gas, don't actually have a say in the actual setting of the gas prices. And that's why the Prime Minister called for more transparency in the way the price of natural gas is set. Now, so for countries like Trinidad and Tobago, it's all about diversifying and adapting to this new natural gas world. That could mean becoming mentors, so to speak, of other emerging markets, like in Equatorial Guinea or Ghana in Africa, or even closer to home, Guyana or Grenada. And of course, there's climate change. Prime Minister Rowley, in his address, acknowledged the importance of climate change and the move to renewable energy. But remember, natural gas is still the country's bread and butter. So he hasn't been, and probably will not be, quick to condemn non-renewable energy.
We thank Kijan for that report. The Caribbean Court of Justice has ruled that a law in Guyana, which makes it illegal for any person to appear in public while dressed as the opposite sex, is unconstitutional. The ruling in the case, brought by 4 trans women and the Society Against Sexual Orientation Discrimination versus the Attorney General of Guyana, determined that the law was vague and violated the appellate's right to protection under the law. Moving on, a court in Peru has rejected an appeal presented by opposition leader Keiko Fujimori against a judge who sentenced her to preventive detention. The judge said there is no real evidence or reason to prove Keiko's case was not independent. Keiko Fujimori was sentenced to 36 months in preventive detention for alleged money laundering. A new law has been approved in Nicaragua to control mining, exploration, and exploitation. We have more in this report.
Rubén González is the president of a small mining cooperative known as Pequeños Mineros de la Libertad. Despite his age, he's continued to work since 1992 as a miner. But a mining company from Canada is trying to prevent González to work. They say González doesn't comply with the Article 43 of a recent law approved in the country regarding small-scale mining.
This is very offensive. These companies talk about defending the environment, but it is them who are not protecting it. I don't know if in Canada they allow this to happen, but they come here and do whatever they want. That is terrible.
Other mining workers have been affected by the operation of the Canadian company B2 Gold. Small-scale miners have denounced these activities cause landslides in the area where they work to fulfill their daily activities. Those affected have met with the company's representatives to solve this problem.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. Palestinian groups in Gaza have agreed in a joint statement to accept a ceasefire brokered by Egypt and the United Nations. However, they only agreed to halt the cross-border attacks that have intensified over the last 48 hours if the Israeli forces do the same. Since the attacks began on Sunday, at least 14 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli airstrikes and at least 1 Israeli by Palestinian counterattacks. Meanwhile, Israeli military forces have deployed tanks to the border with Gaza as a means of reinforcing their military presence in the area. This comes after Palestinian fighters responded to recent airstrikes with a barrage of rockets fired into southern Israel. The Israeli ambassador to the United Nations has claimed Israel is a victim of attacks by Hamas, and therefore the Security Council must only condemn them for recent aggressions in the Gaza Strip.
Let me be clear about that. There is no such a thing, both sides. There is Hamas that attacks and fires over 460 missiles at civilians, and there is Israel that protects its people. The Security Council must only condemn Hamas today for its aggressive assault on civilians and finally designate it as a terrorist organization.
Black Tunisians have welcomed the adoption of an anti-racist law by the country's parliament. Last month, Tunisia's parliament approved a landmark law penalizing the use of racist words, inciting hatred and discriminating on racial grounds. Despite abolishing slavery in 1846, Black Tunisians, who are mostly descendants of slaves, continue to be treated as second-class citizens and face frequent racism.
People will say that there is no discrimination, but there is. People say there are no differences between a white person and a black person, but in reality it is the opposite. In reality, they despise you. The mentalities here are outdated.
The Venezuelan Minister of Industries and National Production, Tarek El Aissami, is on an official visit to Turkey as part of a bilateral cooperation strategy. El Aissami arrived to Ankara on Tuesday and held a meeting with Turkish Vice President Fuat Oktay. Both sides praised the meeting and hope to continue strengthening their ties. Officials from the UK and EU have agreed on a draft text of a Brexit agreement after months of negotiations. Prime Minister Theresa May will be seeking the support of her ministers at a special cabinet meeting on Wednesday. She's currently meeting ministers one by one at Downing Street to brief them on the draft agreement.
Will you be backing this deal, Mr. Grayling?
We're going to stay in the customs union on this deal. We're going to stay effectively in large parts of the single market. And that means it's vassal state stuff. We are going to, for the first time in 1,000 years, this parliament will not have a say over the laws that govern this country. It is a quite incredible state of affairs. It will mean that we are having to accept rules and regulations from Brussels over which we have no say ourselves. It is utterly unacceptable to anybody who believes in democracy. It is not the right way forward. And there is a kicker. And the kicker is that not only are we going to remain in the customs union and in large parts of the single market, but also we will not have protected our precious union.
The German Chancellor has backed calls for a European army. Let's take a look at that story and more from around the world.
The German Chancellor Angela Merkel was booed at the European Parliament in Strasbourg when she called for the creation of a real European army, adding that it should include an EU-wide arms export policy. Her announcement comes after French President Emmanuel Macron made a plea for a European army to stave off what he says are threats from Russia and China.
A united European army would show the world that between European countries there will never be a war. It will not be an army against NATO. Please don't think so. It can be a good supplement to NATO. No one wants to question the classic alliance.
Sri Lanka's Supreme Court has suspended a presidential decree to dissolve parliament and hold new elections, fueling the country's ongoing political crisis. The deputy leader of the main opposition party, Sajith Premadasa, was reported as saying the decision restored the status quo. The political discord began when the president fired the prime minister and replaced him with a pro-China former president. The decision has been met with protests.
This is a time to unite. This is a time to unite, ensure that justice and fairness prevails, that democracy is promoted and enhanced, and this should not be a time to promote political vengeance.
The Ebola outbreak in northeastern Democratic Republic of Congo that has already killed more than 200 people is expected to last until the middle of next year. That is, according to the World Health Organization. So far, it has caused 333 confirmed and probable causes in the province of North Kivu, reportedly the worst in the country's history. The epidemic has been difficult to locate due to factors such as armed conflict and population mobility.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Stefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.